Welcome to the All Sorts podcast. If you love learning all sorts of fascinating things well, then you're in the right place.
That's right.
Today we're going on a deep dive into the fascinating world of oxytocin.
Yeah, we're going to go way beyond those simple headlines you see about the love hormone.
Right, like we're going to uncover its role in things like childbirth and breastfeeding.
Absolutely.
Delve into its impact on social bonding and even look at how its effects can differ between men and women.
Yeah, should be really interesting.
Get ready for some mind-blowing facts and a deeper understanding of this powerful little hormone.
It really is amazing, how much we're still learning about this tiny molecule.
Right.
It's just incredible. Its wide-ranging effects on our biology and behavior.
It really makes you appreciate the complexity of the human body.
Yeah.
So to kick things off, can we get a quick Oxytocin 101?
Sure.
I know it's a hormone, but what does it actually mean?
Yeah, so it's actually a bit of an overachiever in the world of chemical messengers. It's technically classified as both a hormone and a neurotransmitter.
Interesting.
Which means it can act both throughout the body and specifically within the brain.
Oh, so it's sending signals in like two different ways.
Exactly. And here's where it gets even more fascinating.
Okay.
Oxytocin is primarily produced in a tiny region of the brain called the hypothalamus, but it's actually stored and released from the pituitary gland.
Okay.
Which is often called the master gland because it controls so many other hormones.
So it's like a relay race.
Yeah.
The hypothalamus creates it and the pituitary gland delivers it.
Perfect analogy.
Wow.
And here's a fact that really highlights its importance for brain function.
Right.
Oxytocin is found in concentrations 1,000 times higher in the brain than in the bloodstream.
Whoa. That's a huge difference. So it seems like oxytocin is doing a lot more in our brains than we might realize.
Absolutely. And its effects go far beyond just making us feel cuddly. Let's talk about one of its most well-known roles, childbirth.
I've always been amazed by the power of the female body during labor.
Oh, yeah, me too.
What role does oxytocin play in that process?
It's actually one of the key players in this incredible event. Oxytocin stimulates the powerful uterine contractions that help bring a baby into the world. And what's even more fascinating is that it works in something called a positive feedback loop.
Okay, I've heard that term before, but I'm not entirely sure I understand how it works.
Think of it like a snowball rolling down a hill.
Okay.
As labor progresses, the pressure on the cervix triggers the release of more oxytocin,
Right.
which in turn leads to stronger contractions. These contractions further push the baby downward, increasing pressure on the cervix, which signals for even more oxytocin release and so on.
So it's like a self-amplifying cycle that helps ensure a smooth labor process.
Exactly. And this positive feedback loop isn't just limited to childbirth, it's also essential for breastfeeding.
Oh.
When a baby suckles at the breast or even cries, it triggers the release of oxytocin in the mother's brain, prompting the release of breast milk. It's another amazing example of how our bodies instinctively know what to do in these critical moments, thanks to oxytocin.
It's like a beautifully orchestrated dance between a mother and her baby, with oxytocin playing the role of conductor.
It really is.
Yeah.
And this intricate connection extends beyond the physical aspects of childbirth or breastfeeding.
Okay.
Have you ever felt that instant bond with a newborn baby or that overwhelming urge to protect your dog?
Oh, absolutely. There's something about a baby's face or a dog's soulful eyes that just melts my heart.
Well, guess who's playing a starring role in those feelings?
I don't know. Tell me.
You guessed it, oxytocin.
Of course.
It's often called the social butterfly hormone because it contributes to social bonding and attachment across species.
So it's not just about romantic love. It's about all those warm feelings of connection we feel with those we care about.
Exactly. Whether it's a romantic partner, a family member, a close friend, or even a beloved pet, oxytocin contributes to feelings of trust, empathy, and connection. Think about the joy you feel when you hug someone you love, or the closeness you experience when you share a meaningful conversation.
So are we saying that oxytocin is basically a good vibes only hormone? Always promoting love and trust.
It's definitely a key player in those positive emotions, but it's not quite that simple.
Okay.
Research is showing that oxytocin's role in social behavior is much more nuanced than simply making us feel good.
Ooh, intriguing. This is where it gets really interesting for me. What else is there to discover about oxytocin?
Well, for starters, some researchers believe that rather than just boosting positive feelings, oxytocin might actually enhance all social emotions, including the less pleasant ones.
Wait, really? So oxytocin could also be linked to negative feelings? That's not what I expected from the love hormone.
It's definitely more complex than it might seem. For example, some studies have shown that oxytocin can actually increase feelings of envy or schadenfreude.
Schadenfreude.
That's taking pleasure in someone else's misfortune.
That's surprising. I would have thought a love hormone would make us more compassionate, not less. Why would that be?
It's still an area of active research, but one hypothesis is that oxytocin might make us more attuned to social hierarchies and group dynamics. It might amplify our awareness of social status and competition, which can sometimes lead to less desirable feelings.
So instead of just being about love, it's more about amplifying our social awareness, which can have both positive and negative consequences.
Exactly. And speaking of complexities, we can't forget that oxytocin's effects can differ between men and women.
That's right. I remember reading something about how oxytocin interacts differently with other hormones depending on your sex. Can you tell me more about that?
Absolutely. Hormones rarely work in isolation, and oxytocin is no exception.
Right.
One key player in this interaction is estrogen, which can modulate the release and effects of oxytocin in women.
Okay, so how does that difference actually play out? Does oxytocin affect men and women differently in social situations?
That's where things get even more interesting.
Okay.
For example, research has shown that after receiving oxytocin, women are generally quicker to pick up on social cues compared to men who receive the same dose.
Interesting. So women are even more socially attuned after a dose of oxytocin.
Seems that way.
What about in response to a threat?
Yeah.
Does it have the same effect on both sexes?
Well, that's where we see another intriguing difference. Brain imaging studies have found that women show increased activity in the amygdala, the brain's fear center, after receiving oxytocin and then being shown threatening images. Men, however, don't exhibit the same heightened amygdala response.
So in women, oxytocin might actually be making them more sensitive to threats. Why would that be?
This difference could be linked to the influence of estrogen. It seems like the interplay between these two hormones might be priming women to be more vigilant in potentially dangerous situations. It's an area that still needs more research, but it's a fascinating glimpse into the complex interplay of hormones and behavior.
This is all starting to make sense.
Cool.
But we've also heard that oxytocin sometimes has negative or even paradoxical effects. Is there any truth to that?
Absolutely. It's true that some studies have shown that oxytocin doesn't always have positive effects, particularly in individuals with a history of trauma or adversity.
That makes sense. If oxytocin is amplifying social awareness, it could make those with past trauma even more sensitive to perceived threats.
Exactly. It's like their social antennae are already on high alert, and oxytocin might be turning up the volume even further, leading to increased anxiety or distress.
So it's not that oxytocin is inherently bad in these cases.
Right.
It's that its effects are heavily influenced by our past experiences. Are there any other factors that might influence how oxytocin affects us?
We've already talked about estrogen, but another important factor is the interplay between oxytocin and other hormonal systems, particularly vasopressin.
Ah, yes, vasopressin. I remember from our deep dive on stress hormones that it's often linked to stress and aggression. How does it fit into the oxytocin story?
Well, remember how we talked about oxytocin's potential role in amplifying all social emotions, not just the positive ones? It's possible that vasopressin plays a role in that amplification process, especially when it comes to the less desirable emotions like fear, anxiety, and aggression.
So if oxytocin is like a volume knob for social awareness, vasopressin might be influencing which emotions get amplified.
That's a great way to put it. The research on these hormonal interactions is still ongoing, but it seems like oxytocin's effects are truly hierarchical and context-dependent. Its impact on our behavior is influenced by a complex interplay of factors, including our genetics, gender past experiences, and the specific social situation we're in.
That makes sense. It seems like we can't just view oxytocin as a simple love hormone anymore. It's part of a much more intricate system that governs our social behaviors.
Exactly. It's a fascinating puzzle that researchers are still piecing together, but it's clear that oxytocin is much more than just a feel-good chemical.
This has been an incredibly insightful dive so far. I'm already starting to see the world in a whole new light, knowing that this tiny hormone is working behind the scenes, shaping our social interactions and perceptions. But there's so much more to explore, right?
Oh, absolutely. We've only just begun to scratch the surface of the multifaceted world of oxytocin.
Well, before we dive deeper, let's take a moment to remind our amazing listeners that they can support the All Sorts podcast in its mission to spread knowledge and wonder. If you're enjoying this deep dive into the fascinating world of oxytocin, consider hitting that like button on YouTube and subscribing to our channel. And if you want to stay connected and join our vibrant community of knowledge seekers, you can also follow us on X, Instagram, and Threads.
Your support helps us reach even more curious minds, eager to explore the vast and wondrous landscape of knowledge. So thank you for being a part of the All Sorts podcast family.
We'll be back after a short break to continue our exploration of oxytocin. Get ready to unravel even more intriguing insights about this powerful hormone.
Welcome back to our deep dive into the world of oxytocin.
I'm so ready to keep going. We've already uncovered so much about how this hormone works in the body, but I'm particularly fascinated by the link between oxytocin and love.
It's definitely a topic that captures the imagination. After all, oxytocin has earned the nickname the love hormone for a reason.
Exactly. So let's talk about love. Does science actually have anything concrete to say about this elusive emotion?
You might be surprised to learn that science is actually making some fascinating discoveries about the biology of love. And yes, oxytocin is playing a starring role.
Okay, but before we get too deep into the science of love, can we back up for a second?
Sure.
I think it's important to acknowledge that love is a complex emotion.
Right.
With many different facets, we can't just reduce it to a single hormone.
Right. You are absolutely right. Love is a multifaceted experience that involves a complex interplay of hormones, neurotransmitters, and brain regions. But oxytocin is certainly a key player in this intricate orchestra, particularly when it comes to romantic love.
So are all those love songs about hearts racing and feeling butterflies in your stomach actually rooted in biology? Is oxytocin responsible for those feelings?
Well, it's not quite that simple. As we've discussed, oxytocin's primary role seems to be strengthening our connections with those we care about. It promotes feelings of trust and empathy and makes social interactions more rewarding. So while it may not be solely responsible for those butterflies, it's definitely contributing to the overall feeling of intense connection and joy we experience when we're falling in love.
So in a way, it's laying the groundwork for those deeper feelings of attachment and connection to develop.
Exactly. And studies have actually shown that couples in the early stages of romantic love have significantly higher levels of oxytocin
Right?
compared to those who aren't in a relationship.
Wow, so there's a measurable hormonal difference between those who are smitten and those who aren't. That's fascinating. But how does this actually translate into the experience of love? What's happening in our brains when oxytocin is flowing?
Think back to what we discussed earlier about oxytocin's role in social bonding. It promotes feelings of closeness, trust, and empathy, right? Well, when we're falling in love, these feelings are amplified, creating that sense of intense connection and euphoria that we associate with romantic love. And the more we engage in those behaviors that release oxytocin, like hugging, kissing, and physical intimacy, the more those bonds are strengthened.
So it's like a positive feedback loop of love.
Yeah.
The more love we feel, the more oxytocin we release, which leads to even stronger feelings of love. That's a pretty beautiful cycle.
It really is. And this cycle isn't just limited to the early stages of a relationship. Oxytocin continues to play a role in maintaining long-term relationships, fostering feelings of attachment, and promoting those warm and fuzzy feelings that keep the spark alive.
This is also heartwarming. It's like science is giving us a glimpse into the very essence of love. But we also know that love can be complicated. It's not always sunshine and roses.
You're absolutely right. And while oxytocin certainly plays a role in the positive aspects of love, it can also contribute to the challenges we face in relationships.
Ooh, interesting. So how can the love hormone also be linked to the darker sides of love?
Well, remember how we discussed how oxytocin can make us more attuned to social cues, both positive and negative? This heightened sensitivity can also make us more reactive to perceived threats or betrayals in our relationships.
So if we're already feeling insecure or anxious in a relationship, oxytocin might actually amplify those feelings, making us more prone to jealousy, possessiveness, or even aggression. That's a pretty different picture than the warm and fuzzy cuddle hormone we started with.
It definitely adds another layer of complexity to the story, but again, it all comes back to the interplay between our individual experiences and the specific context of our relationships.
That makes sense. It's like oxytocin is giving us a more powerful social lens. But it's up to us to learn how to use it wisely and navigate the complexities of love with awareness and compassion.
Precisely. Understanding the role of oxytocin can help us gain a deeper understanding of both the joys and the challenges of love. And it might even offer insights into how we can build stronger, healthier relationships.
I love that. It's like we're not just learning about a hormone, we're learning about ourselves
Yeah.
and the intricate dance of human connection.
Exactly. And speaking of intricate dances, we've been focusing a lot on the social and emotional aspects of oxytocin, but did you know that it also plays a role in our physical health?
Really, this is news to me. I'm eager to hear how this love hormone can also be a health hero.
Well, research suggests that oxytocin may play a role in protecting our cardiovascular system.
Interesting. I know stress can wreak havoc on our hearts.
Yeah,
So is this where oxytocin comes in to save the day?
you're on the right track. Oxytocin seems to have a calming effect on the cardiovascular system. For one, it can help lower blood pressure, which is a major risk factor for heart disease.
That's incredible. So simply by promoting feelings of love and connection, oxytocin could be lowering our risk of heart problems. I'm definitely feeling a lot more love for this hormone already.
It's a promising area of research for sure, and the benefits don't stop there. Oxytocin may also help reduce inflammation, which is increasingly recognized as a key contributor to many chronic diseases, including heart disease.
Wow, so oxytocin is like a multitasking health protector. Lowering blood pressure and fighting inflammation, it's like a two-for-one deal for our hearts. But hold on a second. Didn't we talk earlier about how oxytocin can sometimes amplify negative emotions? Wouldn't that counteract its beneficial effects on the heart?
That's a great question, and it highlights the importance of context when we're talking about oxytocin's effects. While it's true that oxytocin can amplify negative emotions in certain situations, it seems that its overall effect on the cardiovascular system is positive. One theory is that oxytocin might help buffer against the harmful effects of stress hormones like cortisol and vasopressin.
Oh, that makes sense. So it's like a delicate balancing act between these different hormonal systems, with oxytocin potentially tipping the scales towards a healthier heart.
Exactly. And this interplay between different hormonal systems is something that researchers are still actively investigating. It's a complex puzzle, but one that has the potential to unlock new insights into how we can promote both emotional and physical well-being.
This is all so fascinating. I feel like we've barely scratched the surface of what there is to know about oxytocin.
And you're absolutely right. We could spend hours talking about this fascinating hormone, but for now, let's take a moment to remind our wonderful listeners that they can support All Sorts podcast in spreading knowledge and wonder. Like a gentle breeze carrying the seeds of inspiration, your support helps us reach new minds eager to explore the vast landscape of knowledge.
If you're enjoying our exploration of oxytocin, be sure to hit that like button on our YouTube channel and subscribe to join our vibrant community of learners. You can also follow us on X, Instagram, and Threads for more thought-provoking deep dives into the universe of fascinating facts.
We'll be back after a short break to continue our exploration of oxytocin. Get ready to unravel even more intriguing insights about this powerful hormone.
Welcome back to the Deep Dive. We've been having such a fascinating conversation about oxytocin, exploring everything from its role in childbirth to its influence on our social behaviors.
And how it can even impact our physical health. It really is a remarkable hormone.
It is. And speaking of remarkable, you mentioned earlier that there's still much we don't fully understand about oxytocin. Are there any remaining mysteries that scientists are still trying to unravel?
Oh, absolutely. Despite all the amazing discoveries we've made, there's still so much we're learning about oxytocin and its intricate connections within the body. For example, researchers are still exploring exactly how oxytocin interacts with other hormonal systems, particularly vasopressin.
Ah, yes. Vasopressin. We've talked about it a few times throughout this deep dive, but I'm still curious to learn more about how it fits into the oxytocin story. We know it's often linked to stress and aggression, so how does it play a role in our social interactions?
It's fascinating, isn't it? It seems that while oxytocin might be promoting social connection, vasopressin may be acting as a counterbalance, especially in situations where we perceive a threat or challenge.
So would you say they work together or against each other?
It's not as simple as one versus the other. They're both part of a complex system that helps us respond to our social environment in a nuanced way. Remember how we discussed oxytocin's potential role in amplifying all social emotions? Well, it's possible that vasopressin plays a role in that amplification process, particularly when it comes to the less desirable emotions like fear, anxiety, and aggression.
So it's like a delicate balancing act between these two hormones, with oxytocin drawing us toward connection and vasopressin priming us for self-preservation when we feel threatened.
That's a great analogy. And understanding this interplay is crucial because it could hold the key to developing new treatments for a wide range of conditions, from social anxiety and autism to PTSD and even addiction. By understanding how these hormones interact, we might be able to find new ways to help people who are struggling with these conditions.
Wow, the implications of this research are incredible. It's amazing to think that this tiny hormone could have such a profound impact on our mental and emotional well-being.
It really does highlight the intricate connection between our biology and our behavior.
It does. And as we wrap up this deep dive, I can't help but wonder if oxytocin can be so profoundly influenced by our social interactions and experiences. What does that mean for us as individuals and as a society?
That's a great question, and one that researchers are still exploring. But I think it speaks to the power of connection and the importance of nurturing positive relationships in our lives. If something as simple as a hug or kind word can trigger the release of this powerful hormone, imagine the potential we have to create a more loving and compassionate world, simply by being more mindful of our interactions with each other.
That's a beautiful thought and a powerful reminder that we all have the ability to make a positive impact on the world around us. I know I'm definitely feeling inspired to spread a little more love and kindness today.
I love that. And if you enjoyed this deep dive into the world of oxytocin, be sure to share this episode with your friends, family, and fellow knowledge enthusiasts. It's a topic that sparks curiosity and can lead to some really insightful conversations.
And as always, we want to extend a huge thank you to our incredible All Sorts podcast community for joining us on this journey of discovery. Your curiosity and passion for knowledge inspire us every day.
If you're ready for more captivating deep dives into the world around us, don't forget to subscribe to All Sorts Podcasts on YouTube and follow us on X, Instagram, and Threads. We're always exploring new topics and can't wait to share our next adventure with you.
Until next time, keep those minds, curious hearts open, and spirits bright.
And may your days be filled with all sorts of wonderful discoveries.